The deafening crack of her father's hand against her face sent Cora Galloway stumbling backward into the kitchen table, knocking over a clay pitcher that shattered across the wooden floorboards. Blood trickled from her split lip, but the 17-year-old daughter of the wealthiest cattle rancher in Sweetwater Springs, Colorado Territory, refused to lower her gaze. "You will marry Judge Harmon tomorrow, or I swear I'll see you dead first." Tobias Galloway's weathered face was crimson with rage as he towered over her in the dimly lit kitchen of their sprawling ranch house. The year was 1875, and in this corner of the West, a father's word was law. "I am 18 years old, and I would sooner die than marry that man," Cora replied, her voice steady despite the throbbing pain in her cheek. Judge Walter Harmon was 63, a widower 3 times over, each wife having died under increasingly suspicious circumstances. "He's older than you, Father. His last wife was found drowned in her bath." Tobias lunged forward, grabbing her by the arm. "His money will save this ranch, girl. The drought has taken half our cattle. The bank is calling in our loans next month. Then sell the east pasture. Sell your thoroughbreds, but I won't be sold to that monster." Cora wrenched free, her golden brown hair falling loose from its pins. Her mother, Eleanor, watched from the doorway, her face a mask of resigned helplessness. "Cora, please. Your father knows what's best." "Best for his pocket, perhaps." Cora took a step toward the door, but her father was quicker. "Thomas, Samuel," he bellowed, and within moments his 2 ranch hands appeared. "The girl needs to cool her temper before tomorrow's ceremony. Take her to the root cellar until she remembers her duty." "Father, no." Cora struggled as the men took her arms, but they were strong from years of breaking horses and roping cattle. "You can't do this." "Watch me," Tobias growled. "Maybe a night without food or water will bring you to your senses. Judge Harmon expects a bride tomorrow, not a wildcat." The men dragged her through the kitchen and out the back door. The night air was crisp, stars blanketing the Colorado sky as they forced her across the yard to the hillside where the root cellar was built into the earth. Its heavy wooden door creaked open to reveal absolute darkness below. "Please," Cora whispered to Thomas, the younger of the 2 men. "Don't do this." His eyes flickered with uncertainty, but Samuel shoved her forward. "Sorry, Miss Cora, your pa's orders." They pushed her inside, the earthen smell of potatoes and preserved vegetables filling her nostrils. The last thing she saw before they slammed the door was her father's silhouette against the house, watching with arms crossed. The heavy wooden latch fell into place, and darkness enveloped her. Inside the damp cellar, Cora fumbled around until she found a crate to sit on. Her fingers traced the rough-hewn walls, feeling the cool earth between the wooden supports. In the corner, she could make out the shadowy shapes of food stores, jars of preserved fruits, sacks of potatoes, dried herbs hanging from the low ceiling. "I won't marry him," she whispered into the darkness. "I would rather stay here forever." Hours passed. The only sound was the occasional scurrying of a mouse across the packed earth floor. The air grew colder as night deepened, and Cora pulled her cotton dress tighter around herself, shivering. Her thoughts drifted to her mother, who had once been as spirited as Cora before 25 years of marriage to Tobias Galloway had broken her will. Sometime past midnight, as Cora dozed in fitful snatches, a new sound jolted her awake, the crunch of boots on gravel outside the cellar door. Fear seized her throat. Had her father come to drag her to an impromptu midnight wedding? The footsteps paused at the door. Then came a soft knock. "Miss Galloway." The voice was low, unfamiliar. Cora pressed herself against the far wall. "Who's there?" "Name's Cole Navarro. I work at the Lindstrom Ranch next property over." There was a pause. "Your mother's cook came to our bunkhouse, told us what happened. Resita sent you." Hope flickered in Cora's chest. The Mexican cook had practically raised her, showing more maternal care than Alina ever had. "Yes, madam." "Said you're to be forced into marrying Judge Harmon tomorrow. That true?" "Yes." Cora moved closer to the door. "My father locked me in here until the ceremony." She heard a soft curse, then the sound of something metallic scraping against the wooden latch. "Stand back from the door, Miss Galloway." Cora retreated as the sounds of straining wood filled the small space. Suddenly, a tremendous crack echoed through the cellar as the door splintered around the latch. Light from a lantern spilled in, momentarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, Cora saw a tall figure silhouetted against the night sky. He stepped down into the cellar, lantern held high, illuminating a face that made her breath catch. The stranger couldn't have been more than 25, with dark hair that curled slightly around a tanned face, strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and eyes that reminded her of the sky just before a storm. "Are you hurt?" His gaze found the bruise forming on her cheek, and his expression hardened. "I'm all right," she said, touching her face self-consciously. "Just cold." He shrugged off his coat and placed it around her shoulders. The warm wool smelled of horsehair, leather, and pine, nothing like her father's cologne of expensive tobacco and whiskey. "We need to go. Your father's men patrol the property at night." Navarro extended a hand to her. "Unless you've changed your mind about the wedding." "I'd rather face a firing squad," Cora said firmly, taking his offered hand. His lips quirked in a half-smile. "Then we'd best move quickly. I have horses waiting in the trees." As they emerged into the night, Cora glanced back at the ranch house where she'd spent her entire life. A single lamp burned in the kitchen window. For a moment, she thought she saw her mother's face, but then it was gone. "Where will we go?" she asked, following him toward the tree line. "I have family in a mining town called Silver Creek, about 3 days' ride from here. You'll be safe there until we figure something more permanent." He helped her onto a dappled gray mare. "Can you ride well?" "Since I was 4, Cora answered, gathering the reins with practiced ease. He mounted a muscular chestnut gelding. "Then follow me and stay quiet. We need to be across the county line by dawn." As they rode away from the Galloway ranch, Cora felt terror and exhilaration warring in her chest. She had never defied her father so completely, never imagined she would flee in the night with a stranger. But as they urged their horses to a canter, the cool night air rushing past her face, she couldn't suppress a smile. For the first time in her life, she was free. They rode hard through the night, following game trails and creek beds to avoid the main roads. Cole led them through a landscape that transformed in the darkness, rolling pastureland, giving way to scattered pine forests as they climbed into higher elevations. "Your father will send men after us," Cole said when they paused to water the horses at a small stream. Dawn was just beginning to lighten the eastern sky. "Likely the sheriff, too." "Sheriff Dawson is in my father's pocket," Cora confirmed, stretching her stiff limbs. Despite years of riding, she wasn't accustomed to spending hours in the saddle at a stretch. "And Judge Harmon practically owns the territorial court." Cole's expression grew troubled. "That complicates things. We'll need to move faster than I planned." He studied her face in the growing light. "You're exhausted. There's an old line shack about an hour from here. We can rest there for a few hours before pushing on." "I can keep going," Cora insisted, though her muscles screamed in protest. "The horses need rest," Cole replied, his tone brooking no argument. "And so do you." They mounted up and continued as the first rays of sunlight gilded the mountain peaks. Cora used the growing light to study her rescuer more carefully. Navarro sat his horse with the easy confidence of a man born to the saddle. His clothes were those of a working cowboy, worn denim trousers, a faded blue shirt, sturdy boots, and a battered hat that shadowed his eyes. But there was something in his bearing that suggested he hadn't always been a ranch hand. "Why did you help me?" she finally asked. "You don't know me." He glanced back at her, those storm cloud eyes unreadable. "Resita helped my sister once, years back, said I owed her a favor." A pause. "And no woman should be forced to marry against her will. My father will fire Resita when he discovers her part in this. Already thought of that. She packed her things and is headed to my cousin's ranch near Pueblo. She'll be long gone before your father wakes up." Cora felt a pang of loss. Resita had been her only ally in that house. "Thank you for thinking of her." Cole merely nodded, leading them deeper into the forest. The line shack appeared just as Cora thought she might fall from the saddle with fatigue. It was little more than a one-room cabin with a leaning chimney, built by cattle companies for cowboys working the distant ranges. Cole dismounted and checked inside before helping Cora down from her horse. "It's been empty a while, but it'll do," he said, leading the horses to a lean-to on the side of the cabin. Inside, dust covered every surface, but the roof was intact and a small iron stove stood in one corner. Cole quickly got a fire going while Cora collapsed onto a rough wooden bench, her legs trembling with exhaustion. "There's jerky and hardtack in my saddlebag," Cole said, brushing dust from a small table. "Not much of a breakfast, but it'll keep you going." "I'm grateful for anything," Cora replied, suddenly realizing she hadn't eaten since yesterday's noon meal. They shared a simple breakfast as sunlight streamed through the cabin's single dirty window. Cora found herself studying Cole's hands as he sliced the tough jerky with a hunting knife. They were calloused from work, but his movements were precise, almost elegant. "You weren't always a cowboy," she observed. He looked up, surprise flickering across his features. "What makes you say that?" "Just a feeling." She accepted the food he offered. "And you speak differently than the ranch hands I know. More educated." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "My father was a professor before he caught gold fever and dragged us west. Made sure his children could read Shakespeare even while living in a mining camp." His expression darkened. "Lot of good it did him in the end." "What happened to him?" claimed Jumpers. "Shot him and my older brother when I was 16. He said it flatly, but Cora could sense the old pain beneath the words. "My mother died the year before from mountain fever." "I'm sorry," Cora said softly. "And your sister, married to a shopkeeper in Silver Creek. That's where we're heading." He stood abruptly. "You should rest." "I'll keep watch." Cora wanted to ask more but recognized the wall he'd thrown up. She stretched out on the narrow cot in the corner, exhaustion quickly pulling her toward sleep. Just before she drifted off, she murmured, "Thank you, Cole Navarro. I won't forget what you've done." When she woke, the quality of light in the cabin had changed. Hours had passed. Cole sat by the window, a Winchester rifle across his knees, alert and watchful. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked, sitting up and attempting to smooth her tangled hair. "I'll sleep when we reach Silver Creek." He set the rifle aside and passed her a canteen. "How's your cheek feeling?" Cora touched the tender bruise. "I've had worse." Something dangerous flashed in his eyes, but he only nodded. "We should get moving. Your father's men will have found our trail by now." "How far is Silver Creek?" "If we push hard, we can be there tomorrow evening." He began gathering their few belongings. "The terrain gets rougher from here. Hope you meant it about being able to ride." Despite her aching muscles, Cora managed a smile. "I can match any cowboy stride for stride, Mr. Navarro." For the first time, she saw a genuine smile transform his serious face. "We'll see about that, Miss Galloway." They set out as the sun began its westward arc. The forest grew denser, the trail narrower as they climbed. Sometimes they rode side by side when the path allowed. and Cora learned more about her rescuer in these moments. Cole had worked at the Lindstrom Ranch for only 6 months, having spent the previous years drifting between jobs cowboying in Texas, scouting for the Army, even a stint mining silver in Nevada. "And what about you?" he asked as they navigated a steep switchback trail. "What does the daughter of the mighty Tobias Galloway dream of beyond escape from unwanted marriage?" Cora considered the question. No one had ever asked about her dreams before. "I love horses," she finally said. "I've always wanted to breed and train them myself. My father has thoroughbreds, but they're just status symbols to him. I've read everything I could find about bloodlines and training methods. That's not an easy business for anyone, let alone a woman. I know." She lifted her chin. "But I'm not afraid of hard work." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "I believe that." As evening approached, Cole grew increasingly vigilant, frequently stopping to listen and scanning their back trail. During one such pause, Cora heard what had alerted him: the distant sound of horses moving at speed. "Riders coming," Cole said grimly. "At least 4, maybe more." Fear clutched at Cora's throat. "My father's men, most likely." He quickly surveyed their surroundings. "We can't outrun them on this terrain. We'll have to hide." Cole led them off the trail into a dense thicket of pine and aspen. They dismounted and he led the horses deeper into the vegetation, finally stopping in a small clearing beside a tumble of boulders. "Stay with the horses," he instructed, taking the Winchester from its scabbard. "Keep them quiet. I'll be back." Before she could protest, he melted into the trees, moving with the silent efficiency of a man accustomed to the wilderness. Cora stood holding the reins of both horses, her heart pounding. The mounts sensed her tension, shifting nervously until she stroked their necks and murmured soothing words. Minutes stretched like hours. The forest grew darker as the sun dipped behind the mountains. Then came the sound of horses on the trail they had abandoned, men's voices calling to each other. Cora held her breath, pressing herself against her mare's warm flank. "Tracks lead this way, spread out." "They can't be far," the voices were too close. One of the horses, Cole's chestnut, snorted and stamped a hoof. Cora frantically tried to quiet him, but it was too late. Over there, in the trees, footsteps crashed through the underbrush. Cora looked frantically for somewhere to run, but she was hemmed in by the boulders. A figure burst into the clearing: Samuel, one of the ranch hands who had locked her in the cellar. "Found her," he shouted, reaching for his pistol. The crack of a rifle shot echoed through the trees. Samuel cried out, clutching his shoulder as he fell to his knees. Cole appeared at the edge of the clearing, already working the lever of his Winchester to chamber another round. "Next one goes through your heart," he called to Samuel. "Tell your friends to back off. You're dead, Navarro." Another voice shouted from the trees. "Mr. Galloway's offering $500 for his daughter and $1,000 for your head." "That's mighty generous," Cole replied calmly, "but I'm afraid I'm attached to my head." A shot rang out, splintering bark from a tree near Cole's position. He fired back without hesitation. A cry of pain suggested he'd found his mark. "Miss Galloway, mount up," Cole called, firing again to provide cover. Now, with shaking hands, Cora pulled herself into the saddle. Cole backed toward his horse, rifle still trained on the trees where Tobias Galloway's men were concealed. "There's 4 of us and 1 of you, Navarro," came another shout. "Give us the girl, and maybe we'll let you ride away." Cole's answer was another shot. As soon as he was mounted, he wheeled his horse around. "Stay low and follow me," he instructed Cora, then spurred his horse forward through a gap in the boulders she hadn't noticed. They burst from their hiding place, riding hard along a game trail barely visible in the fading light. Shots followed them, bullets whining through the trees. Cora ducked low over her horse's neck, branches whipping at her face and arms as they galloped through the forest. Cole led them on a punishing route up steep inclines, through streams, doubling back across their own trail. Darkness fell completely, but he never slowed, navigating by some inner compass. When they finally stopped hours later, the horses were lathered with sweat, sides heaving. "Are you hit?" Cole asked immediately, dismounting and coming to her side. "No," Cora managed, her voice shaking. "You grazed my arm. Nothing serious." He helped her down, catching her when her legs buckled. "We've lost them for now, but we can't stop long. Your father's hired guns will pick up our trail at first light." As he spoke, he was already checking the horses, loosening cinches to let them breathe easier. Cora noticed the dark stain on his left sleeve. "Let me see your arm," she insisted. "It's nothing, let me see it," she repeated firmly. With reluctance, Cole extended his arm. Cora carefully rolled up the sleeve to reveal a bloody furrow across his bicep where a bullet had grazed him. "This needs cleaning." She tore a strip from her petticoat. "Do you have water to spare?" He handed her the canteen wordlessly. She cleaned the wound as best she could, then bound it with the strip of fabric. His skin was warm under her fingers, muscles tense. "There," she said, securing the makeshift bandage. "Not as good as Reseda could do, but it will keep until we reach Silver Creek." "Thank you," he said quietly. Their eyes met in the darkness, and something passed between them, a moment of connection that transcended their brief acquaintance. Then Cole cleared his throat and stepped back. "We need to keep moving. There's a place about 2 hours from here where we can rest more safely." They continued through the night, moving more slowly now to preserve the horses' strength. The moon rose, bathing the landscape in silver light. Cora fought exhaustion, focusing on Cole's straight back ahead of her. "Tell me about Silver Creek," she said, as much to stay awake as to learn about their destination. "It's a small mining town, tucked high in the mountains where most law doesn't reach. Started with a silver strike about 10 years ago. The big operations have moved on, but there's still enough ore to keep independent miners working." His voice carried back to her. "My sister Sophia and her husband Daniel run the general store. Good people. Will they welcome a stranger?" "They'll welcome anyone I bring." He glanced back at her. "Sophia has a soft heart for those in trouble. And what about you, Cole Navarro? Do you have a soft heart?" He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Not anymore," he finally said. "Life out here tends to harden a man." "Yet you risked your life to help me," Cora pointed out. "A woman you'd never met." Again that long pause. Some things a man can't ignore, no matter how hard his heart. They rode in silence after that, each lost in their own thoughts. True to Cole's word, they eventually reached a sheltered ravine with a small cave set into its side. A creek burbled nearby. "We can rest here for a few hours," he said, helping her dismount. "Your father's men won't find this place. Few people know it exists. How do you know it?" Cora asked, curious. A shadow crossed his face. "I hid here once before, years ago, when I was running from something else." He didn't elaborate, and Cora didn't press. They cared for the horses first, then Cole built a small, nearly smokeless fire inside the cave. The warmth was welcome after hours in the saddle. "You should sleep," he told her, setting his rifle within easy reach. "We'll leave before dawn." "What about you? I'll keep watch." "You need rest too," she frowned at him. "You can't keep going without sleep." "I've gone longer," he said simply. Cora wanted to argue, but exhaustion was overtaking her. She settled on the ground near the fire, using Cole's rolled-up coat as a pillow. Just before sleep claimed her, she murmured, "Wake me in a few hours. You need sleep too." To her surprise, when she opened her eyes next, the fire had burned low and Cole was sleeping sitting up against the cave wall, his hat tilted over his face. Outside, the sky was still dark, but with the faintest hint of pre-dawn gray. She watched him for a moment, struck by how much younger he looked in sleep. The hard lines of his face softened. Moving quietly, she added small branches to the fire and went to check on the horses. They nickered softly at her approach, seeming recovered from their hard run. She stroked their noses, whispering thanks for carrying them to safety. When she returned to the cave, Cole was awake, instantly alert. "You should have woken me," he said, checking his pocket watch. "It's almost time to go." "You needed the rest," she replied. "Besides, I've been keeping watch." No sign of pursuit. A hint of respect flickered in his eyes. "We still have a hard day's ride ahead. Think you're up to it," Cora nodded, though every muscle in her body ached. "I'll manage." They set out as the first birds began to sing, following a route that took them ever higher into the mountains. The air grew cooler. The trees changed from pine to spruce and fir. By midday, they had climbed above the tree line into a landscape of rock and alpine meadows. "There," Cole pointed ahead to a high pass between two peaks. "Once we cross that, we'll be in Silver Creek territory. Your father's influence doesn't reach that far." Relief washed through Cora. "How much farther to the town?" "Another 6 hours if the weather holds." He glanced at the sky where clouds were building to the west. "Let's hope it does." They pushed on, stopping only briefly to rest the horses and eat some of their dwindling supplies. As they approached the pass, the wind picked up, carrying a hint of moisture. "Storm's coming," Cole said grimly. "We need to cross before it hits." They urged the horses to greater speed, racing the darkening clouds that were swallowing the mountaintops. Just as they crested the pass, the first fat drops of rain began to fall. Within minutes, it had become a downpour. "There's a ranger cabin a mile down this slope," Cole shouted over the wind that now howled around them. "We'll shelter there." The descent was treacherous, the path turning to mud beneath the horses' hooves. Cora clung to her saddle, rain stinging her face, visibility reduced to mere yards. Lightning cracked nearby, causing both horses to shy nervously. The cabin appeared suddenly through the curtain of rain, a sturdy structure built by the Forestry Service for rangers patrolling these remote areas. Cole dismounted quickly and forced open the door, then helped Cora inside while she was still half numb with cold. "Get those wet clothes off," he ordered, immediately setting to work building a fire in the small stove. "There should be blankets in the trunk by the wall." Cora found the trunk and pulled out rough wool blankets, while Cole went back out to secure the horses in a lean-to attached to the cabin. By the time he returned, dripping wet, she had wrapped herself in a blanket, her sodden dress and petticoats hanging from hooks near the stove. Cole averted his eyes, though she was modestly covered. "Fire's catching," he said, removing his own drenched coat and hat. "Should warm up soon." The storm raged outside, thunder rolling across the mountains. Inside, the small cabin gradually grew warmer as the fire in the stove blazed higher. Cole found tins of beans and coffee in the cabin's supplies, and they shared a simple meal as their clothes steamed dry. "Your sister's husband," Cora said as they sat on opposite sides of the small table. "What does he think of your adventures?" Cole's mouth quirked. "Daniel's a good man. Solid. Probably thinks I'm half wild." He took a sip of coffee. "But he gives me credit for looking after Sophia when times were hard, and he doesn't ask questions when I bring trouble to his door." "Is that what I am? Trouble?" His eyes met hers across the table. "The kind of trouble worth having, maybe." Heat that had nothing to do with the stove flooded Cora's cheeks. She looked away, suddenly conscious of her state of undress beneath the blanket, of the intimacy of their situation. "And what will happen when we reach Silver Creek?" she asked, changing the subject. "My father won't simply give up." You'll stay with Sophia and Daniel while we figure out next steps, Cole replied. The town's remote enough that news travels slow. By the time your father learns where you are, we'll have a more permanent solution. What kind of solution? He hesitated. That depends on what you want, Miss Galloway. Cora, she corrected him. After all we've been through, you might as well use my given name. A small smile touched his lips. Cora, then. The way he said her name sent an unexpected shiver through her. And what I want, she continued, gathering her courage, is to never be under any man's control again, not my father's, not Judge Harmon's. A difficult proposition for a woman alone in this territory, Cole observed. I'm aware. She lifted her chin. But I'd rather face those difficulties than return to a gilded cage. Cole studied her for a long moment, something like admiration in his gaze. You're not what I expected, Cora Galloway. And what did you expect? A spoiled rancher's daughter, perhaps. Someone who'd crumble at the first sign of hardship. He shook his head. I was wrong. The compliment warmed her more than the fire. They fell into comfortable conversation as the storm continued outside, talking of books they'd read, places they'd seen or hoped to see. Cole revealed more of his past, his father's dream of establishing a school in the West, his mother's quiet strength, his own youthful ambitions to study law before tragedy redirected his path. And what about you? He asked. What shaped Cora Galloway besides horses and defiance? She told him of her childhood on the ranch, of her mother's gradual submission to her father's domineering ways, of her own secret reading of every book she could find. She spoke of Resita's kindness, of dreams whispered only to her horses, of watching the West change around her as railroads and settlements transformed the once wild landscape. As she talked, Cole watched her with an intensity that made her heart beat faster. No man had ever truly listened to her before. It was an intoxicating feeling. Eventually, the storm began to abate, the thunder growing more distant. Their clothes had dried, but neither made a move to dress. The intimacy of their shelter, the shared confidences, had created a fragile connection that neither seemed willing to break. We should try to reach Silver Creek before nightfall, Cole finally said, though he made no move to rise. If the trail hasn't washed out. Yes, Cora agreed, equally motionless, their eyes held across the small space between them. Then Cole stood abruptly, turning away to gather his clothes. I'll check the horses, he said, voice suddenly gruff. Give you privacy to dress. When he returned, Cora was fully clothed again, her hair neatly braided. The strange spell of their shelter was broken, replaced by the urgency of their journey. They set out into the washed, clean afternoon, following a trail that wound down from the mountains toward a distant valley. By late afternoon, the first buildings of Silver Creek came into view, a scatter of wooden structures nestled in a narrow valley, with mine entrances visible on the surrounding slopes. Not much to look at, Cole said as they approached, but the people are decent, for the most part. The town consisted of one main street with various businesses, a general store, saloon, a say office, blacksmith, and a handful of other establishments. Modest homes spread up the hillsides, interspersed with miners' cabins. A small church stood at the far end of town. Cole led her to a two-story building with Carter's General Merchandise painted across its front. A bell jangled as they entered, and a petite woman with Cole's dark hair looked up from behind the counter. Cole, she exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace him. We weren't expecting you for months. She pulled back, noticing his bandaged arm and Cora standing hesitantly behind him. What's happened? Who's this? Sophia, this is Miss Cora Galloway. She needs sanctuary. Cole's voice held a note of command. Is Daniel here, in the storeroom? Sophia's expression shifted from surprise to determination. "Of course we'll help. Come in, dear, you look exhausted." Within minutes, Cora found herself seated at a table in the living quarters behind the store, a cup of hot tea in her hands while Cole explained their situation to his sister and brother-in-law. Daniel Carter was a solid man with a thoughtful face and steady hands, who listened without interruption. "Tobias Galloway," he said when Cole finished. "I've heard the name. One of the biggest cattle operations in the Southern Territory. And one of the most powerful men," Cole added grimly. "He won't stop looking for her." "You'll stay with us, of course," Sophia said to Cora, patting her hand. "We have a spare room upstairs." "I don't want to put your family in danger," Cora began, but Daniel shook his head. "Silver Creek stands by its own," he said firmly. "And if Cole brought you here, that makes you one of us." Gratitude welled in Cora's throat. "Thank you. I don't know how I can repay such kindness." "No repayment needed," Sophia insisted. "Now, let me show you where you can wash up. You must be desperate for a proper bath after such a journey." The luxury of warm water and clean clothes borrowed from Sophia, though a bit short on Cora's taller frame, nearly brought tears to her eyes. By the time she emerged, feeling human again, a simple but hearty dinner awaited. Cole had also bathed and changed, his injured arm properly bandaged by Sophia, who apparently served as the town's unofficial nurse. As they ate, Daniel outlined what life in Silver Creek would entail. "We're small, but we take care of our own. Most folks mind their business. There's work if you want it. Sophia could use help in the store, and there's a woman on the edge of town who breeds horses. Might interest you from what Cole says." "Mrs. Mackenzie," Sophia explained. "Scottish woman, tough as nails but fair. Came out here when her husband died rather than return east. Breeds mountain hardy stock for the mines and ranches." Cora felt a spark of excitement. "I'd love to meet her." "I'll take you tomorrow," Sophia promised. "For now, you need rest." That night, in the clean, simple room under the eaves of the Carter home, Cora lay awake despite her exhaustion. So much had changed in just 3 days. She had lost everything familiar: her home, her family, even her clothes. Yet she felt strangely unburdened, as if she'd shed a weight she hadn't known she was carrying. And then there was Cole Navarro, the man who had risked everything for her, who had shown her a glimpse of what it meant to be truly seen and heard. Where did he fit in this new life she was building? Before she drifted off to sleep, she heard the murmur of voices downstairs, Cole and Daniel in conversation. She caught only fragments. "Can't stay in town long. Bounty hunters will come. Need to leave by week's end." Her heart sank. Cole was planning to leave. Of course he was a drifter, a man who never stayed in one place long. She had no claim on him, no right to expect anything more than the help he'd already given. Still, as sleep finally claimed her, she found herself hoping he might stay just a little longer. The next week passed in a blur of new experiences. Sophia introduced Cora to Silver Creek, a town unlike any she had known. Here, social hierarchies mattered less than hard work and fair dealing. The residents were a mix of miners, shopkeepers, a few ranching families from the surrounding area, and women of varying backgrounds who had found their way to this remote outpost. True to her word, Sophia took Cora to meet Fiona Mackenzie, the horse breeder. The Scottish woman was in her 50s, with iron-gray hair and the weathered face of someone who spent most of her time outdoors. She eyed Cora suspiciously at first. "Another fine lady come to play at horses?" she asked bluntly. "No, madam," Cora replied with equal directness. "I've worked with horses all my life. I'm here to learn if you're willing to teach." Fiona studied her for a long moment. "We'll see. Come back tomorrow at dawn. Wear clothes you don't mind getting dirty." It was a start. Cora spent her mornings with Fiona, learning the particular challenges of breeding horses suited to mountain life, and her afternoons helping in the carter's store. The work was exhausting but satisfying in a way that her previous life had never been. Cole remained in Silver Creek, though Cora often saw him preparing for departure, purchasing supplies, studying maps with Daniel, checking his weapons. They had little time alone together, but she felt his eyes following her when they were in the same room, a constant awareness humming between them. 5 days after their arrival, as Cora was returning from Fiona's ranch, she found Cole waiting for her on the road into town. "Walk with me," he asked, falling into step beside her. They followed a path that led above the town to a rocky outcropping with a view of the valley below. The late afternoon sun bathed everything in golden light, the aspens shimmering in the gentle breeze. "It's beautiful here," Cora said, breaking the silence between them. "I can see why your sister stayed. It suits some people." Cole's voice was neutral, but she could sense the tension beneath it. Sophia was always meant for a settled life, a home, family, community. "And you weren't," he shrugged, "never seemed to fit anywhere for long." Cora turned to face him directly. "You're leaving soon." It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. "Tomorrow. There's word your father's hired guns have been asking questions in Denver. Won't be long before they trace us here. And you think your leaving will protect the town, protect me. They're looking for a man traveling with a young woman. If I'm gone." He didn't finish the thought. "So you'll draw them away," Cora said, understanding dawning. "Use yourself as bait." Something like that. Anger flared suddenly in her chest. "And I don't get a say in this plan, just like I didn't get a say with my father." Cole's eyes widened in surprise. "This isn't the same thing, isn't it? Men making decisions about my life without consulting me." She stepped closer to him. "I didn't ask to be rescued just to be protected like some helpless child." "You're not helpless," he said quietly. "But your father's reach is long, and his memory even longer. He won't stop looking for you." "Then let him come," Cora said fiercely. "I won't spend my life running or hiding." Cole studied her face, something like admiration mingling with frustration in his expression. "What would you have me do instead?" The question hung between them. Cora had no ready answer that didn't reveal too much of her heart. Instead, she asked, "Where will you go? North, maybe, Montana Territory, or west to California?" He looked away toward the distant mountains. "Doesn't much matter." "It matters to me," she said softly. His gaze snapped back to her face. For a long moment neither spoke. The air between them seemed charged with unspoken words. Finally, Cole took a step back. "We should head back. It'll be dark soon." Disappointment washed through Cora, but she nodded and fell into step beside him. They walked in silence, the tension between them unresolved. That night, a commotion woke the household shortly after midnight. Cora hurried downstairs to find Daniel at the front door of the store, talking urgently with a young miner. "Rode in just now," the man was saying. 6 of them, heavily armed, asking for a man named Navarro and a woman matching Miss Galloway's description. "Where are they now?" Daniel asked, his voice tense. "Saloon, throwing money around, offering rewards for information." Cole appeared beside Cora, already fully dressed, his gun belt buckled around his waist. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," the miner replied. "Town's loyal, but that kind of money loosens tongues." Daniel turned to Cole. "Take her out the back way, the mine tunnel we discussed. Horses are already saddled." "No," Cora said firmly, stepping forward. Everyone turned to look at her. "I'm tired of running." "This isn't the time for heroics," Cole began, but she cut him off. "It's not heroics. It's practical." She looked at each of them in turn. "My father's men will keep coming as long as they believe I'm being held against my will. There's only one way to stop this." "What are you suggesting?" Daniel asked. I need to confront them, publicly, make it clear that I left willingly and have no intention of returning or marrying Judge Harmon. Cole shook his head. They won't care. They have orders to bring you back, willing or not, in front of the whole town. That would be kidnapping. Wouldn't be the first time the law's been ignored in these parts, the miner muttered. But it would create witnesses, Cora insisted. And more importantly, it would make clear that this isn't a rescue mission. It's a forced retrieval. The men exchanged glances. Sophia, who had joined them, spoke up. She's right, Cole. Running just confirms their story that she was taken against her will. Cole's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the sound of horses approaching drew their attention. Too late for debate, Daniel said, moving to the window. They're coming this way. Get upstairs, Cole ordered Cora. Both of you, he added to Sophia. No, Cora's voice was steady. I told you I'm done running. The determination in her eyes must have convinced him, for after a moment Cole nodded sharply. Stay behind me at least. Daniel retrieved a shotgun from beneath the counter as heavy footsteps approached the store. A fist pounded on the door. Navarro, we know you're in there. Send out the Galloway girl and maybe you'll live to see morning. Cole moved to the door, positioning himself so he could see through a crack while remaining mostly hidden. There's 6 of them, he confirmed, all armed. Do you recognize any? Daniel asked. 2 from the ranch. The others look like hired guns. Cole glanced at Cora. Last chance to reconsider. She shook her head, squaring her shoulders. Cole exhaled heavily, then called through the door. The lady doesn't wish to leave. Take that message back to Galloway. We're not asking, Navarro. We've got orders to bring her back, and you in a pine box if necessary. This town stands behind its own, Daniel shouted. You start trouble here, you'll have more than Navarro to deal with. As if to emphasize his point, doors began opening along the street. Miners, shopkeepers, and townspeople emerged, many carrying weapons. Silver Creek might be small, but its residents protected their own. There was a murmur of conversation among the men outside, then the leader called again. Send out the girl to talk, at least. Let us hear from her own mouth that she's staying willingly. Cole looked at Cora questioningly. She nodded. She'll speak from the doorway, Cole replied. No closer. After a tense moment, the leader agreed. Cole opened the door slightly, keeping his body between Cora and any potential threat. She stepped up beside him, looking out at the group of armed men illuminated by the moonlight and a few lanterns from nearby buildings. Miss Galloway, the leader said, removing his hat. She recognized him as Thomas, one of the men who had locked her in the root cellar. Your father is sick with worry. He sent us to bring you home. My father is worried about his business arrangement with Judge Harmon, Cora replied clearly, her voice carrying in the night air. I left of my own free will to escape a forced marriage to a man 3 times my age. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Galloway says this man kidnapped you, says he broke into your room and took you against your will. A ripple of murmurs ran through the gathered townspeople. Cora's voice grew stronger. My father locked me in a root cellar to force me to marry Judge Harmon. Mr. Navarro broke the door at midnight and offered me escape. I chose to go with him. She lifted her chin. I am 18 years old. I have the right to determine my own future. The law says different, miss. Another of the men spoke up. A daughter belongs to her father until she's married. Not in Silver Creek, came a woman's voice from the crowd. Fiona Mackenzie stepped forward, shotgun cradled in her arms. We judge people by their actions, not their bloodlines. The girl stays if she wants to stay. More voices joined in agreement. The men from the Galloway ranch found themselves facing a united town. The leader's expression hardened. Mr. Galloway won't accept this. He's got friends in the territorial government. Then let him come himself, Cora replied. Tell my father if he wants to speak to me, he can come to Silver Creek as a visitor, not with armed men. Thomas hesitated, clearly unsure how to proceed. Finally, he jammed his hat back on his head. This isn't over, miss. Yes, it is, Cole said, stepping fully into view, his hand resting on his holstered pistol. The lady has spoken. Take that message back to Galloway. For a tense moment, it seemed the confrontation might still turn violent. Then one of the other ranch hands tugged at Thomas's sleeve, nodding toward the crowd of armed townspeople. Outnumbered and outmaneuvered, Thomas finally nodded curtly. "We'll be back," he warned as they mounted their horses. "And we'll be waiting," Daniel replied, the shotgun steady in his hands. The men rode off, the sound of hoofbeats fading into the night. Gradually, the townspeople dispersed, many stopping to offer words of support to Cora and the Carters. Fiona Mackenzie gave Cora an approving nod before heading back to her ranch. Inside the store, the tension gradually eased. Sophia made coffee while Daniel secured the doors and windows. Cole stood by the window, watching the street with narrowed eyes. "They won't give up so easily," he said finally. "No," Cora agreed, "but we've bought time and created witnesses. If anything happens to me now, people will know it wasn't by choice." "Smart thinking," Daniel commented, setting down his shotgun. "Braver than most would be in your situation." Cora looked at Cole, who was still watching the street. "Does this change your plans to leave tomorrow?" He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "We should discuss that privately." Once they were alone in the small office at the back of the store, Cole paced like a caged mountain lion. "That was reckless," he said finally. "Brave, but reckless. They could have opened fire." "Not with the whole town watching," Cora countered. "And it worked, didn't it, for now?" He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Your father won't stop. Men like Tobias Galloway don't accept defeat." "I know," she said quietly, "but neither do I." That brought a reluctant smile to his face. "No, I don't imagine you do." "So," Cora said, meeting his gaze directly, "are you still leaving tomorrow?" Cole was silent for a long moment. "It might still be safer for everyone if I did." "Safer, perhaps, but is it right?" She took a step closer to him. "Running won't solve this, Cole. We need to face it head on." His voice was soft, questioning. "Yes, we." Her heart pounded, but she pressed on. "Unless you truly want to leave." The distance between them seemed charged with electricity. Cole's eyes never left hers as he said, "What I want and what's best aren't always the same thing, Cora." "And what do you want?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Instead of answering, he closed the distance between them. His hand came up to cup her face, calloused fingers gentle against her skin. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, balanced on the edge of something momentous. Then his lips met hers, tentative at first, then with growing certainty as she responded. The kiss was unlike anything Cora had experienced, not that she had much to compare it to. Just a few stolen moments with a neighboring rancher's son when she was 16. But this was different. This was a conversation without words, a promise, a question. When they finally broke apart, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I've wanted to do that since that night in the line shack," he admitted. "Why didn't you? You were under my protection. It wouldn't have been honorable." She smiled at that. "And now?" "Now you've proven you don't need my protection. You're standing on your own." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "But I find I want to stand beside you all the same." "Then stay," she said simply. "Stay and help me build something here." The struggle was visible on his face. "I'm not a settling down kind of man, Cora. I've spent years drifting. Maybe you just haven't found the right reason to stay in one place." She covered his hand with her own. "I'm not asking for forever, just for now, just long enough to see if this is worth exploring." He studied her face as if memorizing every feature. "Your father will still come for you. and we'll face him together with the town behind us." She smiled. "Besides, I have plans. Mrs. Mackenzie is willing to take me on as an apprentice. She has no children to inherit her ranch. In a few years, I could have a business of my own. Horse breeding in the mountains," Cole mused. "It suits you." "And what would suit you, Cole Navarro, if you could choose any future?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I never allowed myself to think that far ahead. One day to the next was enough." "Think about it now," she urged. "What would make you happy?" "This," he said simply, and kissed her again. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm. Cora divided her time between working with Fiona Mackenzie and helping in the Carter store. Cole found work with a local freight company, guiding shipments through the mountain passes he knew so well. In the evenings, they would walk together, talking of their days, their dreams, their pasts. The connection between them deepened, though neither rushed to define what was growing. Word came that Tobias Galloway had indeed approached the territorial government about his kidnapped daughter. But the officials were reluctant to intervene in what appeared to be a family dispute, especially with conflicting accounts from the town of Silver Creek. The threat remained, but it grew less immediate as days passed. One evening, as they sat on the porch of the Carters' home watching the sunset, Cole surprised Cora with a question. "Have you ever thought of writing to your mother?" Cora considered this. "I've thought of it. But she made her choice long ago. She chose to stay with my father, to turn a blind eye to his cruelties." "Perhaps she had no choice," Cole suggested, "or felt she had none." "Everyone has choices," Cora said firmly, "even difficult ones, like the choice you made to leave everything behind." She nodded. "Exactly. I couldn't live the life my father had planned for me. I won't judge my mother for staying, but I can't pretend to understand it either." Cole was quiet for a moment. "Family is complicated." "It is," she agreed, "but we can choose our family too, can't we? Like you and Sophia chose to be each other's strength after your parents died. And like this town chose to stand with you," Cole added. "Family isn't always blood." The conversation lingered in Cora's mind for days. Family, choice, belonging. These were concepts she was redefining for herself in this new life. And at the center of it all was Cole Navarro, a man who had begun as her rescuer, and was becoming something far more important. A month after their arrival in Silver Creek, Cole took Cora on a ride into the hills surrounding the town. They followed a trail that wound along a rushing stream, climbing steadily until they reached a small valley nestled between two ridges. A meadow of wildflowers stretched before them, bordered by aspen and pine. "It's beautiful," Cora breathed, dismounting to walk among the colorful blooms. "How did you find this place?" "Daniel told me about it," Cole replied, securing the horses. "Said it was where he proposed to Sophia." Cora's heart skipped a beat at his words. She turned to find Cole watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "I'm not proposing," he said quickly, reading her expression. "Not yet, anyway. That would be too soon for both of us." "But," she prompted, sensing there was more. He approached her, taking her hands in his. "But I wanted to show you this place because I've been thinking about the future, about staying in Silver Creek." "Yes." His thumbs traced circles on her palms. "The freight companies offered me a partnership. They need someone who knows the mountain routes, who can negotiate with the mining companies." Joy bloomed in Cora's chest. "You're considering it." "More than considering. I've accepted." His eyes searched her face. "I've been running for a long time, Cora, since my father and brother died. Never staying anywhere long enough to be hurt when I had to leave. And now I've found someone worth the risk of staying." He released one of her hands to touch her face gently. "I can't promise I'll be good at it, being in one place, being with one person, but I want to try." Cora felt tears prick her eyes. "I want that too," she whispered. He pulled her close, his kiss both tender and passionate. When they broke apart breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "There's more," he said. "Daniel heard from a friend in the territorial capital. Your father is coming to Silver Creek." Fear and determination warred within her. "When?" "Within the week. He's bringing Judge Harmon and the county sheriff." Cole's arms tightened around her. "This is the confrontation we've been expecting." "Then we'll face it," Cora said, straightening. "Together, with the town behind us." "Together," Cole agreed, sealing the promise with another kiss. They rode back to town to spread the news. The community rallied, preparations were made, and a strategy formed. Silver Creek might be small, but it was united in protecting its own. Tobias Galloway arrived on a Tuesday, his entourage creating a stir as they rode down the main street. Judge Harmon, Sheriff Dawson, and 4 armed men accompanied him. They stopped outside the general store, where a gathering of townspeople waited. Cora stood on the porch, Cole beside her, the Carters and Fiona Mackenzie nearby. She felt calm, despite facing the father she had fled. Tobias dismounted, his eyes immediately finding his daughter. He had aged in the 2 months since she'd seen him, new lines etched into his face. "Cora," he said, his voice carrying in the tense silence. "It's time to come home." "This is my home now, Father," she replied steadily, his face hardened. "You have responsibilities, obligations. The ranch is yours, not mine," she interrupted. "I never asked for that legacy." Judge Harmon dismounted, his corpulent frame making the movement awkward. "Young lady, your father and I had an agreement, a binding contract." "A contract I never signed," Cora countered. "I cannot be sold or traded without my consent." The judge's face flushed with anger. "Your father speaks for you in legal matters." "Not anymore." Cole stepped forward. "Miss Galloway is of legal age and has established residence in Silver Creek. She's under the protection of this community." Sheriff Dawson spat on the ground. "Ain't no law in these mountain towns. Just miners and drifters." "You're wrong, Sheriff," Daniel said, stepping up beside Cole. "We have our own justice here, and it includes respecting a woman's right to choose her own path." Tobias Galloway's gaze shifted to Cole, hatred burning in his eyes. "You're the one who stole my daughter. Broke into my home." "I broke a door," Cole replied evenly, "to free someone wrongfully imprisoned. Your daughter came willingly." "A pretty story," Tobias sneered. "Sheriff, arrest this man for kidnapping and breaking and entering." Sheriff Dawson moved forward, but found his path blocked by townspeople who had closed ranks around Cole and Cora. "Think carefully, Sheriff," Fiona Mackenzie called out. "You have no jurisdiction here, and we outnumber you considerably." Tension crackled in the air. For a moment, it seemed violence might erupt. Then a new voice spoke up. "If I may offer a solution." Heads turned to see a distinguished older man making his way through the crowd. Judge Morrison, the circuit judge who visited Silver Creek periodically to hear cases, had arrived for his monthly visit just the day before. "Judge Morrison," Daniel greeted him with obvious relief. "Your timing is impeccable." "So it would seem." The judge surveyed the scene with shrewd eyes. "I understand we have a dispute over a young woman's future." Quickly, both sides presented their arguments. Judge Harmon cited legal precedents about a father's authority, while Cora and Cole explained the circumstances of her departure from the ranch. Judge Morrison listened carefully, then addressed Tobias Galloway directly. "Mr. Galloway, while the law does grant fathers certain rights, it does not permit imprisonment to force a marriage. If what your daughter says is true, you overstepped your authority." "She's lying," Tobias insisted. "This man has poisoned her mind." "I think we should hear from Miss Galloway herself," Judge Morrison suggested. Alone, without pressure from either side. After some argument, all agreed. Cora followed the judge into the privacy of the general store, where he questioned her thoroughly about her circumstances, her father's actions, and her current situation in Silver Creek. "And what of this young man, Navarro?" he asked finally. "Is he the reason you refuse to return home?" Cora considered the question carefully. "He's part of it," she admitted. "But even if Cole weren't in my life, I wouldn't return. Not to be my father's property, not to be forced into marriage with a man I don't trust or respect." Judge Morrison nodded thoughtfully. "And what do you seek here in Silver Creek?" "Independence," she answered without hesitation. "The chance to build my own life, make my own choices. I'm learning horse breeding from Mrs. Mackenzie. In time, I hope to establish my own business." "Admirable ambitions," the judge said. "Few young women have such clear vision." When they emerged, Judge Morrison addressed the gathering. "Having heard all sides, I find no legal grounds for compelling Miss Galloway to return to her father's house. She is of legal age, has established independent residence, and has credible claims of mistreatment that justify her departure." Tobias Galloway's face contorted with rage. "This is outrageous. She is my daughter." "She is her own person," Judge Morrison corrected firmly. "The law respects that, even if you do not." Judge Harmon sputtered indignantly about contracts and agreements, but Judge Morrison silenced him with a stern look. "I suggest you seek a bride elsewhere, Judge Harmon. This match is clearly not to be." For a moment, it seemed Tobias might refuse to accept the ruling. His hand moved toward his gun and several townspeople tensed. Then, remarkably, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "You've made your choice, then," he said to Cora, his voice bitter. "Don't come crying to me when this mountain town and this drifter fail to provide the life you're accustomed to." "I won't," Cora replied, her voice steady. "Goodbye, Father." Tobias mounted his horse without another word. Judge Harmon and Sheriff Dawson, seeing no alternative, followed suit. As they rode away, Cora felt a weight lift from her shoulders, the burden of expectation, of obligation to a legacy she had never wanted. Cole's arm slipped around her waist, drawing her close. "It's over," he murmured. "Yes," she agreed, leaning into his strength. "Now we begin." The aftermath of the confrontation solidified Cora's place in Silver Creek. Judge Morrison's ruling gave legal standing to her independence, and the community's support during the showdown cemented her acceptance as one of their own. Life settled into new patterns. Cora's apprenticeship with Fiona Mackenzie progressed rapidly. Her natural affinity for horses impressing even the taciturn Scottish woman. Cole's work with the freight company took him away occasionally, but never for long, and his returns were increasingly jubilant as he discovered the joy of having a place and a person to come home to. Their courtship unfolded gradually, deliberately, both of them learning to trust in permanence after lives of disruption. They attended town socials together, shared Sunday dinners with the Carters, spent quiet evenings talking of dreams and plans. When Cole finally proposed 6 months after their arrival in Silver Creek, it was in that same mountain meadow of wildflowers, now covered in a light dusting of early snow. "I can't offer you the wealth your father could," he said, holding her gloved hands in his. "But I can promise to stand beside you, not above you, to build a life together, not to dictate yours." "That's worth more than all my father's cattle," Cora replied, tears of happiness freezing on her cheeks. "Yes, Cole Navarro, yes, I will marry you." They wed the following spring, with Sophia as maid of honor and Daniel as best man. Judge Morrison officiated, giving the union legal blessing that even Tobias Galloway couldn't challenge. The entire town celebrated, the general store transformed by wildflowers and lanterns for the occasion. Mrs. Navarro, Cole murmured as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. How does it sound? Like freedom, Cora replied, smiling up at him. Like home. 2 years later, Fiona Mackenzie signed over her ranch to Cora, taking on the role of advisor as her health began to fail. The Navarro Horse Ranch quickly gained reputation for breeding intelligent, sure-footed mountain horses, particularly sought after by mining companies and the growing number of settlers in the high country. Cole continued his work with the freight company, eventually becoming full partner. His knowledge of mountain routes proved invaluable as Silver Creek expanded, the silver mines giving way to other industries as the town matured. Together, he and Cora built a modest but comfortable home on the ranch property, with wide windows facing the mountains they both loved. Their first child, a son they named James Daniel Navarro, arrived 3 years into their marriage. Fiona, now firmly established as an honorary grandmother despite her gruff demeanor, pronounced him a fine lad with a good seat for horseback. Mark my words. On the evening of James's first birthday, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and purple, Cora received a letter that had traveled from Denver via the freight lines. The handwriting on the envelope made her breath catch. "It's from my mother," she said, surprised. Cole sat beside her, little James dozing in his arms. "Are you going to read it?" Cora hesitated, then carefully opened the envelope. The letter inside was brief but heartfelt. Cora Galloway wrote that she had finally left Tobias after 28 years of marriage. She was living with her sister in Denver, finding unexpected freedom in her middle age. She expressed regret for her weakness, for not standing with Cora when it mattered most, and tentative hope that perhaps someday they might reconnect. "She left him," Cora whispered, tears in her eyes. "After all this time." "It's never too late to find courage," Cole observed, shifting their son to his other arm. "Will you write back?" Cora considered the question, watching the last rays of sunlight gild the distant peaks. "Yes," she decided. "Not to go back, but to share what I've found, who I've become." Cole's free arm wrapped around her shoulders. "And who is that? Cora Navarro?" She leaned into his embrace, her gaze taking in their home, their child, the life they had built together. "Someone who chose her own path," she replied. "Someone who found freedom not in running away, but in standing firm for what matters." "I like her," Cole said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I liked her from the moment she stood defiant in that root cellar, refusing to bend to anyone's will but her own." Cora smiled, tucking the letter away. The past had its place, but her focus was on the present, this family they had created, this community that had embraced them, this love that had grown from the most unlikely beginning. As twilight deepened into night, they carried their sleeping son inside, to the home they had built together, not a prison, not a cage, but a sanctuary of their own making. A place where doors were never locked against one's will, where the only bonds were those freely chosen. In the years that followed, the Navarro Horse Ranch prospered. Cora's breeding program gained recognition throughout the territory, drawing buyers from as far as California. Cole's freight business expanded with the growing rail lines. Though he always maintained his preference for the mountain routes, he could travel on horseback. Cora Galloway eventually came to visit, a tentative reunion that blossomed into a stronger relationship than they had ever had under Tobias's roof. She delighted in her grandson James and, later, in the daughter Cora gave birth to when James was 4, a spirited girl they named Sophia Fiona Navarro, after the 2 women who had helped shape their new life. Word reached them occasionally of Tobias Galloway. The drought that had threatened his ranch passed, but his fortunes never fully recovered from the financial setback, that had prompted his attempt to marry Cora to Judge Harmon. The judge himself died 2 years after the confrontation in Silver Creek, found face down in his own bathtub in circumstances that raised questions but were never fully investigated. Silver Creek grew from a mining outpost to a proper town, with a school where James and Sophia received the education Cole's father had once dreamed of bringing to the West. The Carter's General Store expanded, becoming a mercantile that served the entire county. Fiona Mackenzie lived to the remarkable age of 78, imparting her hoarse wisdom to both Cora and young James, who showed his mother's affinity for the animals. On the 10th anniversary of their wedding, Cole surprised Cora with a journey back to the root cellar where their story had begun. The Galloway Ranch had been sold years earlier, but the new owners permitted their visit out of curiosity about the local legend. Their property had spawned for the tale of the rancher's daughter rescued by a cowboy at midnight, had become something of a romantic myth in the territory. Standing before the rebuilt cellar door, Cole took Cora's hand. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. She looked up at the man who had broken down the door to her prison, both literally and figuratively the drifter who had found his home in her heart, the rescuer who had shown her how to rescue herself. "Not one," she replied, rising on tiptoe to kiss him. "Every choice led us here." "And where is here exactly?" he teased, arms encircling her waist. Cora smiled, thinking of their children waiting with Sophia and Daniel back in Silver Creek, of the ranch they had built together, of the community that had become their extended family. "Home," she said simply. "The one we chose, the one we built together." As they rode away from the ranch that had once been her cage, Cora Galloway Navarro felt nothing but gratitude for that desperate night when they had locked her in the root cellar for refusing to marry. And a cowboy broke the door at midnight, the first step on a journey that had led not to escape, but to the greatest freedom of all. The freedom to love, to choose, to build a life defined not by others' expectations, but by her own brave heart.